After a week-long battle against the deadly Los Angeles County wildfires, crews are still in a critical stage trying to get the flames contained. But now winds are stirring back up in the area. Western Mass News reporter Taylor Smith is live in studio with the latest developments. Taylor, what details do you have this morning?
Well, Amanda, Los Angeles residents that have not had to evacuate are once again bracing for more possible destruction as weather forecasts indicate that these winds helping fuel the flames might pick back up again. So far, at least 24 people that have died and dozens are still missing, and the LA County's fire chief warning the community that the work to put out the area's deadly fires is far from over. Roughly 40,000 acres and over 12,000 buildings and structures have already been destroyed, and red flag warnings have been put in place. Now fire crews are being strategically placed in high-risk areas to combat more breakouts, and the National Weather Service has issued an expanded warning about winds that could gust up to 70 miles per hour. Now firefighters are a little more prepared this time around, but the danger risk is still high as major hotspots in Eaton and the Palisades are still uncontained.
Severe fire weather conditions will continue through Wednesday.
You can't drive through the roads. There's power poles down. There's live, electrical wires that are potentially lethal. The water is not safe to drink. The structures are not standing. Things are collapsing. Fires are still burning.
Horrible. Now, still, crews have been going door to door since Monday, urging residents who remain under evacuation orders to stay away as they work to get these fires under control. And reporting live in the studio this morning, Taylor Smith, Western Mass News.